I'm Patrick Byers, Horticulture Field Specialist with University of Missouri Extension, and I'll be presenting this issue's Fruit Report. In this issue, we'll talk about fall and winter management of strawberries, and then we'll conclude with an update on the calendar of events in both tree fruit and berry plantings. When we think about strawberry production in Missouri, we have two different production systems. The first system, the annual plasticulture system, is planted in the fall, managed over the fall, winter, and spring, harvested in the spring, and then the planting is discarded. With matted row strawberries, these plantings are planted in the spring and they're managed for several years, perhaps up to 3 to 4 years of production as a perennial planting. With annual plasticulture strawberries, the goal of fall management is strong, healthy, large vegetative plants by December. The plants at this point should have the diameter of a dinner plate, and there should be 3 to 5 branch crowns present on each plant. Looking at this picture, if we look closely, we can see how the original plug plant that was planted in September has divided. We can see in this picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 branch crowns. This is a good size for annual plasticulture plants moving into the winter. With matted row strawberries, the goal is to maintain a healthy, well-filled row. Flower bud development begins and progresses during the fall, and it's very important that the plants not be stressed at this point. So again, our goal with matted row strawberries is to maintain a healthy, well-filled row. Fall irrigation can be very important from the management aspect of both annual plasticulture and matted row strawberries. Strawberries need 1.5 to 2 inches of moisture per week throughout the fall, and we've irrigated plantings in Missouri as late as November. So be prepared to turn on the irrigation system. In other words, don't winterize the system too early. It is, of course, important to winterize irrigation systems on strawberry plantings as we move into the colder part of the late fall. Let's talk a bit about fall runnering with annual plasticulture plants. When annual plasticulture plantings are put in, they're generally planted as plug plants in September, and they begin to produce runners under the long days of the early fall period. These runners, if not removed, will inhibit the formation of branch crowns and flower buds. So it's important to remove these runners as they develop. These runners should be cut or pinched off, not pulled off. Pulling off oftentimes will damage the crowns of the plants. Runner removal should begin 3 to 4 weeks after transplanting, and it may take 2 to 3 passes over the planting to catch all of the runners. Try to complete runner removal about 6 weeks after transplanting. Row covers are a very important management tool for both annual plasticulture and for matted row. When used with annual plasticulture in the fall, they can be helpful to enhance growth and development and to develop branch crown numbers and also flower bud development. For the wintertime, floating row covers can be very helpful from the standpoint of protection of plants from sublethal temperatures. For winter management, the row covers must be placed and removed at the proper time. And for the spring, row covers are helpful for frost protection. Now, this is most effective early in the spring while plants are still dormant or just coming out of dormancy, but there's also value to using row covers to protect against late frosts as late as the flowering or even the post-flowering period. The floating row covers that are typically used as a management tool with strawberries in the fall and the winter are 1.25 to 1.5 ounce per square yard floating row covers. These row covers are rated by the weight of a square yard. As far as the size, a typical width of a row cover would be 60 foot, and then they come in varying lengths, 125, 250, 300, or even larger. The larger the cover, of course, the more people it takes to manage the placement and the removal of the row cover. A 60-foot width is helpful because it will cover 10 rows of strawberries when they're planted in the typical spacing of 5.5-foot centers. Keep in mind the floating row covers will limit sunlight exposure to plants. It's important not to place them at the wrong time. For example, too early in the fall or too late in the spring. They can be helpful, however, particularly in falls where cool temperatures arrive early, to place over plantings to enhance fall plant growth and flower bud initiation. Typically, however, row covers are placed when weekly temperatures average about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which here in Missouri, particularly in southern Missouri, will be around Thanksgiving. And then the row covers are removed in late February or early March when day temperatures are consistently above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The row covers are secured with rock or sandbags every 4 foot. If we look at this picture, we can see examples of what rock bags would look like. This planting is also interesting because we can see in the background row covers in place, And if we notice up front, we've actually pulled back a part of the row cover, and we can see the plants that were covered with the row cover are in good shape, but there was a portion of this field where the row cover was too short. It did not cover. You can see the snow in the row middles there, and notice that those plants are much less vigorous. They've been damaged by winter temperatures, and this will certainly significantly affect the yield from these plants. And again, keep in mind that row covers cannot be removed when they're wet. You have to allow them to dry before you put them on or take them off, and row covers will limit sunlight. Keep in mind too that although a smaller crew can manage a row cover under still conditions, if the wind is blowing, it's going to take more hands to effectively place and remove row covers. There are farmers who are using straw as a mulching material for matted row plantings. Source your straw early and be sure to avoid straw that has excess grain seed. This grain will germinate and become a weed problem in the planting. And it's also important to source straw that has not come from fields that have been treated with persistent herbicides. Generally, matted row plantings are mulched when the plants are dormant. This is typically going to be in late November or early December. And the goal is to place 4 to 6 inches of loose straw over the planting bed. This equates to about 2.5 to 3 tons per acre or 300 small bales per acre for flat plantings. If the farmer is mulching a matted row planting on raised beds, it may take twice this amount of straw to adequately fill both the area between the beds and the beds themselves. Now let's move into the calendar of activities. We'll start with tree fruits, peaches, and stone fruits. This is an important time to monitor orchards for vole activity and to take management steps if necessary. Start your fall orchard cleanup, winterize irrigation as we move into late October and early November. There are some farmers who will fertilize lightly as we move into the late fall. This can be helpful. The trees will take up the nutrients, but they will not begin to grow. So this can be a good time to charge trees with nutrients. The same thing can be done with apple and pear orchards. Typically, harvest is winding down in all but the very latest ripening cultivars of apples and pears in Missouri. Again, important to monitor for vole activity, start fall orchard cleanup, and winterize irrigation. With berries, we've just discussed annual plasticulture management in the fall. Again, maintain plantings, remove runners, continue to irrigate as necessary, and then begin to think about row cover placement. Matted row, maintain plantings, and make plans for mulching either with straw or with floating row covers. Brambles, primocane harvest will be winding down in all but the high tunnel grown brambles, but there is still some harvest that takes place in October. Maintain the plantings, especially with irrigation. Blueberries, maintain plantings, especially irrigation, and elderberry, maintain plantings. So we're definitely winding down activities in the berry crops. Please feel free to reach out to any of the horticulture field specialists that are stationed across Missouri with questions related to commercial horticultural production. Take a look at this map, locate your home county, and identify the field specialist assigned to that county. If your farm is in a county that does not have an assigned specialist, reach out to the specialist that's located closest to you. I'm sure they'll be happy to help. The emails of the specialists is listed here on this slide.